something that's, and it's important to set goals, don't get me wrong, but like just to kind of go what you just said a minute ago about like how your students were kind of comparing themselves to others and not themselves. There's this book that I finished, and I'm looking at it right now on my phone on Audible. Actually, the audiobook's I think only 5 hours long, or it's not that long. It's called The Gap and the Gain. Ooh. I encourage everyone to look into it. The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And what it is, it talks about how we spend as humans so much time comparing ourselves to the ideal or to somebody who did better. Mm-hmm. And that's called living in the gap, right? You're living in this gap where there are unmet expectations or unmet realities, right? Mm-hmm. The gain is comparing yourself to where you were when you started, or that 30% that now you're at 50%. That's the gain. And we need to be willing to remember that and think about, okay, this is where I was. It's every day you wake up and you say like, I want to be 1% better, right? Like I've heard people say that all the time. It's the same thing. It's the same concept, but you're trying to think about it from like a larger, like a bigger picture thing, and say, you know, I went to the gym 5 days out of the week last week. This week I've only made it 2, but guess what? 3 weeks ago you went to the gym 0 times. Mm-hmm. Like it's just worth kind of thinking about things from a different frame or from a different lens, rather than comparing yourself to like these athletes who you see on TV who are like spend so much time in the gym and are, you know, like it's not necessarily the healthiest way to spend our energy and our time. And I think it's just like that's something that I think resonates with me in terms of comparison. And you know, you wanted to talk about imposter syndrome. We don't want to let that go either. But that kind of is relevant in a sense, because we're talking about, you know, again, setting goals. It's important to set goals of where you want to be. Every year I try to do, you know, my moleskin. I try to fill it out with a bunch of different goals for the year. I don't always stick to it, but I try. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I make kind of like a plan for the year. And it's important to at least measure yourself to who you were in the past versus measuring yourself to people who you see that are successful, who have had all this experience doing it. And, you know, like it's not, I don't think that's a fair comparison to yourself. Mm-hmm. And I think it's not really fair to others who are watching you go through, because like, wait a minute, like this is, you're, you know, they want to see you succeed, especially the people that are part of your soul tribe. Like I said, yeah, you know, they want to see you succeed, and seeing you compare yourself to these like rock stars who are doing it already, they don't want that for you either. Like if they're part of your like true tribe, like they want you to be thinking about where you were back in the day, and then how you've gotten to where you are now. Like that's kind of where my head's at on that.
Is it dangerous to compare your happiness to what someone else's success, you think?
Yeah, I think it is. I really think it is. You know, and I've had this conversation on one of the podcast episodes. I want to say, I could be wrong, but I want to say we talked about happiness needs to be something that comes from within, and it can't be from external things. And there's a concept called it's called it's I forget the exact phrasing. It'll come to me in a second, but it's called the hedonism. It's like the hedonism mechanism, and the idea being that we think that we can find happiness from, say, winning the lottery, right? Say tomorrow you win the Powerball, or say yesterday you won the Powerball, which was a huge deal. Say you won the Powerball. Well, that's fine. You will find happiness and you will find joy, but it'll be temporary. Mm-hmm. And you will find it, but then there's this only so far you're going to go with happiness. And then you're going to kind of have this steady kind of medium baseline that you're going to come back to, right? It's like a boomerang effect. You're going to go back to where you generally were. Like you might have like a temporary boost in your happiness and your mood, whatever, but that can happen from getting a new Tesla, right? You know, or, you know, like you buy a new car, you're so happy about things. You boost your mood, you're happy.
I had one of the clips from Mental Health Mondays go super viral. Yeah. And it was amazed at how it went. But that's the thing, is it's one video And if I compare the rest of my videos to that video, my podcast is doing terrible.
Terrible, right?
But I mean, it's like, if you take that out of the curve, you take that out of the equation, I've got a steady growth I have a steady growth of viewership. It's just that one goes viral. It's kind of like that's that one like you win the lottery. It's like, great. But yeah, exactly. It's almost like, there's that instant gratification versus long-term lasting happiness.
Yeah, hedonic adaptation. I just looked it up. I had it up here. Hedonic adaptation, and like we just have to practice mindfulness and gratitude. Like that's the way to kind of counteract it. If you're willing to, and that's part of the reason why I post a good morning reading every morning on X. It's not because I'm trying to game the system or whatever, right? Some people think that that's kind of the plan. No, the idea is that, like, guess what? I'm providing some sort of content. I'm expressing my gratitude for people actually interacting with me. And guess what? That might actually be something that keeps them going for a couple hours in the morning tomorrow, or this morning. Like that's something that I think people sort of forget, is that your actions now aren't just now. Like what you do, say for instance, you go to, or you get out, you end this call or end this conversation, you go in your car and you drive to the nearest, coffee shop, and, on your way there, you let somebody, get into your lane because you're feeling kind. There's a song by Geggy Talk called Wherever You Are from the late 90s that you should look up. Letting somebody, let me change lanes while I was driving my car. Like you let somebody drive, let me, like, guess what? That might be what gets them to their job interview on time. That might be what helps them feel like the world isn't conspiring against them. Like there's so many kind of moments that are kind of cascades that people forget about. That there's more than just this is what happens and that's all that happens. And I think when we remember that, I think it's easier to have gratitude, because the reality is, like, it's kind of a miracle that we're even on this planet talking to one another. 2023 Mind Runner, we're doing this. Like we don't have to be on the phone or on a landline. We don't have to be in person. Exactly, telegraph. We don't have to be in person. Talk. It would be fun to do that. Don't get me wrong, but we don't have to be in the same room to have this conversation. We should be extremely grateful for even the simple things like that. Like that's something that people sometimes take for granted, and that's kind of where what I think about that.
I agree. Catch new episodes of Mental Health Mondays every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Start your week off with a smile and some inspiration.